It's a great honor to meet you all here. I'm going to talk about my two favorite subjects. One is optimism, and the second one is Japan. I'm originally from Germany, was educated in the United States, and I've been stuck in Japan for the last 40 years. So if you ever come to Tokyo, let me know. But being an optimist on Japan, people always say, you're crazy. How dare you be optimistic on a country where in 156 years, only 11 people are going to be left? As you know, the population is going down. And what I want to show you over the next sort of 12 minutes or so is that exactly because the population is going down, that's exactly why you should be optimistic. Scarcity is the mother of invention. And as you know, the Japanese are very proud. They used to be number one in the world, coming from nowhere to being the second largest economy in just 21 years. They have rigid systems, and breaking open those rigid systems is now happening precisely because even the best companies in Japan, like Hitachi, have to fight to retain their most important asset, which of course is their people. Now, when you look at Japan, the ultimate strength, yes, the population is going down, but look at the strength. When you look at technology, and I'm sure there's been a lot of discussion about technology, it's interesting, at the end, technology is all about communication. It's either B2B, B2C, or C2C, right? And if you look at how technology has progressed, when the telephone was invented, it took actually 50 years to reach 50 million customers. This has accelerated ChatGPT 38 days. But the winner is Japan, is Pokemon. So there's a fundamental strength here, whether you're a teenager in Sao Paulo or whether you're somebody in China. Yes, Japan sparks the imagination, has an enormous amount of soft power. And there's money in this. You know, the Americans are fantastic at always selling themselves. Star Wars. Well, I'm sorry, Hello Kitty makes twice as much money as Disney. So this is an incredible, powerful backbone that you have, and you see for this country that you are running year in, year out, the largest balance of payments surpluses. Ever since I've arrived, yes, the prices of Tokyo real estate collapsed very dramatically, but for the last 40 years, every year, Japan was the world's largest creditor country. It's not China, it's not Germany, it's Japan that year in, year out brings these big surpluses. There are people who tell me, oh my God, but what about the fiscal deficit? Japan's debt to GDP is 262%. We've never seen this before in economic history. Well, why do you look only at one side of the balance sheet? I mean, the liabilities. What about the assets? And what you actually see is the red line, the private sector, for every 100 yen that the government borrows, over the last 20 years, the private sector has saved 140 yen. This is not Britain. This is not the United States, who have massive deficits. Japan is a big surplus country. And then look at the other elements. What is it all about? We talk about economic progress. We talk about nation building. At the end of the day, what do you want? You want the stock market to go up? That's a little cheap, right? You are looking at society. And if you look at social problems, if you look at mathematics literacy, if you look at imprisonment, obesity, drug addiction, Japan is exactly where you want to be. It's the number one socio-economic model in the world. By the way, 8 years ago, I was invited to the Trump 1.0 White House. I showed this chart to them, and they went, yes, go America, top right-hand corner. But you get the point, right? Japan is not a high-growth economy, but the thing works from a social stability perspective. What's it all about? Number two, You want your children, you want your grandchildren to be better off than you. Do you have intergenerational earnings elasticity? Sorry, that's an Economist technical term. What that means is, do you have to come from rich parents in order to be economically successful? And again, you actually see that Japan is in a fantastic position. Japan has one of the best public education systems in the world. If you are born from an underprivileged, economically underprivileged background, your possibility to actually run Mitsubishi Corporation is very, very high. You also notice America and China, that doesn't look so good, right? But you also do note that in the previous chart, as well as in this chart, what else do you know? My country, Germany, is better than France, which is very important, right? This scarcity that we're talking about, right? When I was running JP Morgan in Tokyo for many years, we tried to hire the best and the brightest, right? This is what you need. The best and the brightest in Japan go to the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of the Economy. And as you can see, these young men and women did not move. I could not hire them. But over the last 4 or 5 years, you see that they're actually starting to move. There's a liquidity now. I can hire the best and the brightest. And it's very interesting, where do these young men and women go? Do they go to JP Morgan? Do they go to Mitsubishi Corporation? 2/3 of them go to startups. So that image that you have, that little boring Japanese salaryman who doesn't want to take risk, is completely wrong, precisely because the demographics is making it work that way. And you're seeing it in the fact that wages for people who are shifting jobs, which didn't happen in Japan, now they are, and you actually see that if you're in your 20s, your pay goes up by 40%. By the time you're my age, it's not quite so good, but anyway. And what you see also is that the quality, and this is very important, the quality of contracts, you and I starting to work in Japan, do we get a full-time contract, or do we become part of the geek economy where you live from contract to contract to contract? Sounds sexy, but it's really not very good. And you actually see that in Japan, full-time employment is now growing. By the way, what's the big difference between full-time and contract employment? Marriage. You can show that if I have a part-time contract, I can probably get a date. I mean, you and I could, right? We could probably get a date, we cannot get married. The moment I get married, my probability to get married, the moment I get a full-time contract, my probability to get married goes up to 92%. So watch the Japanese society improve. So Japan, this is the new Prime Minister, Mr. Takaichi, right? Is ambitious, is a bastion of stability, and is extremely confident. Let's talk a little bit more about the confidence. You know, the Japanese are very shy. I mean, no Japanese talks about Japan the way I do. For them, there's always a problem, right? They're craftsmen. They want to be perfect. Well, okay. When Warren Buffett came to Japan 8 years ago, right, before he made these big investments in the trading companies, right, we had a lot of discussions. And it was very interesting. One of the charts I showed him was this. This is listed companies, right? These are the greedy guys. And you see that sales for the last 30 years were flat, but profits were up 11 times. Any of us who runs a business, you know, when sales are flat, you can eke out a profit for a couple of quarters by cutting costs, but doing this for one generation, I think you deserve the Nobel Prize for actual running of an enterprise. And you see this, of course, is not reflected in the way people are paid. In the United States of America now, if you and I are a CEO of a company, we earn 400 times what the average employee works. In Japan, it's gone up. It's about 38 times, right? What is the right level? I do not know. It's a nice dinner discussion to actually have. Japan is rich. Like we showed, big savings. Japanese companies have an enormous amount of cash on their balance sheet. And you see now, for the first time in 40 years, these cash balances are actually starting to come down. You actually see that there is also a record amount of takeovers. 7% of Japanese companies were not for sale, right? Now, 7% of listed companies last year received a takeover bid. One of them, Courtage, the Canadian retailer, trying to buy Japan's crown jewel, which is 7-Eleven, the convenience store. If you ever come to Tokyo, you must have the egg sandwich at 7-Eleven, right? It is an absolute dream to actually have. What about the hard stuff? You and I are interested in returns. America makes big capital returns, 15, 16% ROE. Japan does an ROE, return on equity, of around 8 to 9%. If you look at the distribution, what do you see? You see that Japan has this boring bell curve, while America is actually not good at all, but does have superstars, right? Michael Jordan, or Sho Otani, if you like baseball, right? They play in America. The question to you, young man, why are there no superstars in Japan? The reason is that Japan is an unbelievably fierce competitive landscape. If you look at the different industries, what you find is that in each industry silo, like from hairdressers all the way down to steel companies, the top 4 companies in Japan control less than 12% of revenues. In America, it's 35%. Now, if you and I are an oligopoly, our ability to hike prices and earn higher returns is obviously much higher. What is interesting, by the way, because industry is so fragmented, is so super competitive, as a result of that, there's all this funky, weird, sexy stuff going on. My favorite statistics, last year, Japan launched 1,300 new non-alcoholic soft drinks. 1,300. Do you know how many Coca-Cola new soft drinks they launched over the last 20 years? 4. By the way, one of these non-alcoholic soft drinks was a thing called sparkling mayonnaise. Sparkling mayonnaise. Absolutely fantastic, right? You see that you've got, this productivity, which is where the optimism does come in. You see that in the industrial sector, productivity is good. In the domestic service sector, it's stagnated. This is because they have not invested, right? And this will change now. When you look at AI, you see that actually the public attitude towards AI in the industrialized world, in the old world, they are more nervous than they are excited. In the global south, they're more excited than nervous. And in Japan, they're absolutely not nervous at all. We've always dealt with machines, but they're not particularly excited. They're kind of here or there. By the way, the fastest adoption of AI-based solution for the public sector is the Japanese government. It's very interesting. The European governments, the American governments are actually very, very resistant. And then, yes, of course, Japan does now talk about hard power. They do have one of the largest navies in the world, and they build, very, very sophisticated ships going forward. A couple of things on challenges, right? One, is it good to be old? My wife always accuses me, oh, Jesper, the only reason you love being in Japan is because everybody else gets older faster than you do, right? But all joking aside, we have an election on Sunday, and, the people over 65 are now 1 in 3. You find that they do make up, however, basically 2/3 of all the voters. Now, obviously, elder people are much more conservative than younger people. You get it, right? What is also a little bit worrying is that Japan now has to choose between guns and butter, right? We do have to, for whatever reasons, increase the defense budget, right? I'm not advocating this, it's just a reality. So where does the money come from? And they're actually starting to cut back in research and development. And that's a potential sort of 20 years down the road, that's something that is potentially very worrying. So, my final point, have a look at Japan. There's lots of reason to be optimistic. Don't get pulled by this lazy economics of, the population grows, therefore things are good. Have a look at the real assets that countries have, and most importantly, have a look at what actually motivates the Japanese elite. And what motivates the Japanese elite is, number one, I'm running out of people. So I have to become creative to motivate them. The second thing that motivates them is that the two big partners for Japan are the People's Republic of China and the United States of America. And it has become very clear that both of them cannot be trusted. So as a result of that, there is a national energy that is being galvanized for the geopolitical things. I personally think that as the world tries to figure out where to go, I actually think that Japan is a role model for optimism for the rest of the world because, yes, thank you, we do have a socio-economic and political system that actually does create incredibly positive societal outcomes, as I've demonstrated before. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope to see you in Tokyo. Thank you.